Boy, do we have a major game between rookie quarterbacks. Now, think about that. Rookie quarterbacks with a winning record. We're going to talk about it here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
That's right. Welcome to the new Locked On NFL, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with the help of our local experts that know your favorites like no one else. I'm the host, Tony, the Barber Wiggins, joined today by Locked On NFL expert David Harrison. And man, do we have a show for you. Today we're going to end up talking about the Bengals. They win in their second ugly game in a row. Is it sustainable? We'll discuss that. Right in the middle, double trouble at wide receiver in Tampa. Some very unfortunate injuries. What do the Bucs do? Do they get into the market of the trading that's likely to go on? Or do they not? Do they refrain and just try to ride with what they have? We're going to start the show, though, talking about Caleb Williams and Jayden Daniels duking it out this Sunday in a matchup of top quarterbacks. And folks can argue all day about who's the best, but we have an expert right here that's close to it that'll tell you all about that. We appreciate you for making us your first listen of the day and for being a part of the Locked On Podcast Network and the Everydayers here on Locked On NFL, which is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure you tune in again in the morning for Tyler the Madman Rowland for more NFL coverage. Today's episode is brought to you and sponsored by FanDuel. That's right. Go on over there, man, to FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. I didn't say you had to win. I said you just had to start. All you got to do is make your first $5 bet and $200 in bonus bets. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. David Harrison, my brother from another mother. What is going on, man? And how are you ready for this game this weekend? And first of all, is Jayden Daniels going to play?
I think there's a good chance that Jayden Daniels plays, but there's also a good chance that Jayden Daniels doesn't play. The tricky part about this, so I think from a physical standpoint, I think medically, Jayden Daniels will probably be cleared to play. The thing about it is, though, Dan Quinn and this staff have been very conservative when it comes to injuries, whether it be Johnny Newton and his foot injury that he suffered or that he came in with, honestly, after the NFL draft, Cleveland Farrell and the knee injury that he was dealing with back in training camp. And even Brian Robinson, when the Commanders went to Baltimore to face the Ravens, Brian Robinson medically was cleared to play. Dan Quinn and his staff said, you're not the same Brian Robinson that you need to be. You're not the B-Rob that we want you to be. Because of that knee, we're going to shut you down. Now, he said it was a tough decision, but the right decisions oftentimes are the toughest decisions. That's the decision they made. Listen, I know they lost to the Baltimore Ravens. Certainly could have used Brian Robinson, but I'm going to stand by Dan Quinn and say that is absolutely the right decision to make. Don't put the rest of your season or this man's career in jeopardy because you want to win a game. Think about the forest, not the tree that's standing in front of you. That's what Dan Quinn did. And then Brian Robinson comes back the next week, which was this last weekend against Carolina Panthers, and B-Rob rips off 12 carries or 70-plus yards and a touchdown. So, evidence supporting theory right there in that decision. So if Dan Quinn says, Jayden's medically cleared, but Jayden's not Jayden right now, he could very well sit him against the Chicago Bears. So so it's a little bit less. It's a little bit more complicated than will Jayden be cleared, because I think Jayden will be cleared, but they may not play.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. Both of these teams they have overachieved, maybe not with what their goals were, but they've overachieved when it comes to what everybody thought, the fans and everybody thought. But both of those guys have lived up to it. And I'm telling you, it's going to be must-see TV for me if they both do line up, because I want to see the side-by-side comparison with everyone saying that at least Dan Orlovsky was like, Jayden Daniels is my number one guy. But both guys actually living up to the hype. And, Caleb Williams is a DMV kid, and it's funny to see probably him going against the team that he rooted for. Speaking of the Bears, there's some thought that the Bears may enter into the free agency market a little bit. But Lauren Cox from Locked On Bears says, no, we ain't going to rush nothing. The Bears need to make smart decisions. They made a smart decision when they traded or another commander last year. Listen to what he says.
Any trade you make has to be for the next 5 years, not the next 10 games. That's why the trade for Montez Sweat last year at the deadline made so much sense. It was a trade for the long-term future. And so when I see Chicago Bears fans daydreaming about, say, Hassan Reddick from the New York Jets, that doesn't fit the type of player that the Chicago Bears would want to go after at a trade deadline. Yes, he's looking for a long-term contract extension. But also, Hassan Reddick is 30 years old. That's not ancient in NFL terms, but when you talk about a guy in his prime, he's nearing the end of it.
Makes all the sense in the world for them to slow play this unless Coach Eberflus feels like he has to win and has to get a wild card in order to save his job. Yeah. But I'm not going to preach about team building because it seems like the team you cover has done a real good job of it. And he talked about Montez Sweat. So give us your opinion of what he said and the assessment of the Bears situation right now moving forward, David.
Yeah, as usual, Lauren Cox is spot on, right? He's a very smart. He's one of the smartest hosts on this network, and I don't think that's that's an insult to anybody else. It just is facts.
It's a fact.
And the Chicago Bears are absolutely in that realm. And Hassan Reddick is absolutely not a person that fits the design of what the Chicago Bears are doing. Trading for Hassan Reddick, if you're the Chicago Bears, like you just referenced, is a sign of job desperation. That's what that is, and really not even the head coach. It's more the GM. Is the GM in desperate need of trying to keep his job by putting this team over the top or anything like that? And if Ryan Poles doesn't feel like he's in that position, he has no reason to go trade for Hassan Reddick, who, oh, by the way, is very much proven to not be a team player. Like you need first of all, you need guys that are going to play for your team for the next 5 years, like Lauren Cox said, but you also need guys that want to play for your team for the next 5 years. And Hassan Reddick very much wants to play this year for himself, next year for himself, and then 3 years from now, probably for himself as well. And that is not the type of player that the Chicago Bears want. That's the type of player that maybe the Baltimore Ravens could want because, hey, if your selfish attitude helps us get a ring, all right, we'll bring you in for a year, and then next year, good luck in the free agent market. But you're the Chicago Bears. All Hassan Reddick is going to do is maybe potentially put you in deeper draft position than you should be as a team organically and actually hurt your development further on.
So while I have you here talking about this game and both of these team situations, I'm astonished and I'm amazed at not only the fact that they hit with quarterbacks, Dave, but I'm amazed at the fact that both of these teams seemingly did a lot of other stuff correctly too, considering where they were a year ago and the way people felt about them. There's a lot of painstaking work that these GMs do, man, and they go through that people don't, you don't win a lot of praise and admiration when it happens, but in the long term, it's always better when these things turn out right. And you can say, see, there you go. I got a track record and maybe be a blueprint for how you move moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think when it starts, you start with the quarterback position, right? You start with the quarterback position, and they have two guys. Each of these teams have two guys that not only are obviously talented, they've got the arm talent enough and all this other stuff in their resume from their college experiences, Heisman trophies, and all that good stuff. But they also have the ability to be difference makers on the field, right? And when you're talking about trying to kickstart a team from the bottom of the league towards the middle of it, upwards to the top of it, that's where you want it. That's where you need a quarterback that can not just come in here and execute your game plan, but elevate your team. And both of these guys are showing signs that they can be those guys. I'm not putting either of these guys in the category of team elevators just yet. Let's get through a half a season before we start to even try to have that conversation. But when you look at both Caleb Williams and Jayden Daniels, you see the signs of these guys being potential guys who can elevate your franchise into the future. When you look at some of the other quarterbacks that haven't necessarily risen, Carson Wentz, Jared Goff. Like I know Jared Goff is doing good stuff in Detroit right now, but when you look at some of these other first-round quarterbacks, Sam Darnold, comes to mind. They're guys who had the arm talent, had the requisite resumes and all that good stuff, but when they got on the field, they were not elevators. They were not guys that brought their team up to a certain extent. They could take advantage of good situations. They could take advantage of solid game plans, certainly drive the vehicle, but they didn't make the car go faster. And I think and it's hard, right? And I'm not sitting here being like, that's what every other team should be doing. That's what they're all trying to do, right? It's very hard to go find those guys. I mean, you look at, and I'm gonna hit a soft spot for you, Wake, here. But you look at Trevor Lawrence, like Trevor Lawrence come out of Clemson. I was like, all right, dude's a great athlete, good college quarterback. But did he make Clemson better? Or was he part of a really good Clemson team? To me, he was a part of a really good Clemson team. Now you look at him in Jacksonville, is he making the Jaguars better? Or is he good when the Jags are good as well? I think right now you look at Trevor and say more, he's good when the Jags are good, not he makes the Jaguars good when they otherwise wouldn't be. And you could tell me more on that, certainly in another conversation. But that, I think, is the difference here between these two. And then also the way these organizations are going about this whole thing, it's very wisely crafted veteran contracts, right? You see guys like Keenan Allen, Bobby Wagner joining these teams. They're not handcuffing these teams with their salary caps. They're not doing anything like that, but they're also allowing these teams to have vehicles to develop their talent. And then you see a lot of strategic, shorter deals that are put in place that allows the team flexibility. And then you have a few. Frankie Louvu is on a 3-year deal in Washington. Montez Sweat gets his deal in Chicago. You got a few guys you're like, we think you're a key playmaker on this team, defense specifically in this situation. So we'll give you a multi-year contract. But even those, like if Montez Sweat falls off a cliff, if Frankie Louvu falls off a cliff, they can actually get out of those deals in a year or two if they really need to. So even those are not restrictive deals. And that flexibility to pivot each way while you're trying to build around your young quarterback, I think is absolutely crucial.
I hope he plays. I hope Jayden Daniels plays so we can have drama. And then I just love good competition. And then to see which one of these guys can kind of get, keep from getting knocked off of their square because of the pressure of playing against the other guy. All right, we got some situations with injuries and then some flat play from two teams from the NFC South that 2 weeks ago were all the rave in the NFL. And then they go out and lay an egg this weekend. We'll discuss that and more here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. I don't care if you're late to buying tickets. I don't care if you had to wait until payday. It does not matter. You are never too late to get your tickets for any sporting event when you have the Game Time app. And Game Time actually has a curation process also when you're looking for tickets, and it helps you go all through the stuff and the fluff that you don't even need to get to. I don't care if it's baseball, basketball, football, like all of that is going on right now. But you talk about monster trucks and plays and theater, all of it. Game Time is the place that you need to be. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code. I'll spell it out for you. LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Today's show is also brought to you and sponsored by Prize Picks. Listen, man, Prize Picks is the absolute truth, man, because you go there and there's 10 million members of Prize Picks and there's billions of dollars awarded, right? But you're not playing against all 10 million members. You're just playing against Prize Picks and their projections. Those stat projections they put up, you just go more or less. That's all you got to do. And if you get between 2 and 6 of them right, guess what, man? You get paid a whole bunch of Skrilla. You get about 4 of them right. Sometimes you can even get up to 100 times your money. And that is absolutely something that you need to do. Is just download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. I'll repeat it again. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. All right, rolling along here on Locked On NFL with my man David Harrison of Locked On NFL, Locked On Commanders, making sure that we give you the information that you need to get you through the week before you start doing all of the stuff that you're going to do on FanDuel and other places, and whether or not you're going to go to Game Time and get some tickets and all of that stuff. Look, the Bucs were on national television last night playing against the Ravens, the hottest team in the league, or 2 days ago, and it looked like they were off to a really, really good start, and then injuries started to hit them. And one of the things that I thought about was I've never seen a team have 2 players that play the same position that are of this caliber that both had injuries that may keep them out for a really, really long time. This is the weirdest thing I saw last night, but Peacock and Williamson discussed that today. I'm talking about the injuries to both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. It's like, and with Godwin, I really feel bad for him for obvious reasons. But listen to what Peacock and Williamson has to say, and it really, really makes a lot of sense that if the Bucs still believe that they can contend, that they might get in that trade market for a guy like maybe Cooper Kupp. But check this out.
Let's start in Tampa, where the Baltimore Ravens went in to Tampa and really put a beating on the Buccaneers. And 41-31 was the final score. It wasn't that close. There was some late garbage time points from the Buccaneers. They were trying to come back in this one. And I think we got to start with the gruesome injuries here, or the gruesome injury, but the other devastating injury for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is the Mike Evans hamstring. So rough for the Buccaneers here after a Monday Night Football loss as well, and they fall to 4-3.
Yeah, and we can get in the game here in a minute, but that's going to be really hard to overcome. I mean, cluster injuries, the same position, is something general managers, front office, coaches can't really prepare for. They'll say things like next man up and all that good stuff, but deep down they know that it's something you can't overcome.
Yeah.
Godwin was having a great year, and he's a free agent after the year. And I'm just thinking about the players' futures. That really hurts his situation. Evans, I have to think both these guys are out for the year. I'm just operating under that assumption because the way that Evans reacted with that hamstring, and he was ruled out immediately. It was not a minor strain or anything like that.
All right. So since they recorded that, it's been Todd Bowles has come out, head coach Todd Bowles of the Tampa Bay Bucs, has said that they're aiming to bring Mike Williams back after their week 11 bye. And, they could be out of it by that point with the way that things are looking right now in the NFC. David, he called it a cluster of injuries. That's the word I guess I was looking for. Have you ever seen anything like this? And if you were the Bucs, what would you do? Would you stand pat, or would you try to go out and get somebody?
I mean, in one game, no. I think that's an absolute worst case scenario. When you talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you ask anybody who the Tampa Bay Buccaneers top three players are, it's Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Antoine Winfield Jr. Levante David is a close fourth. They literally lost their top two players, if not their top two players, two of their top three players. If you want to argue Antoine Winfield Jr. should be one or two. And not just that. And I'm trying not to make too big a deal of this, but they also, their head coach might have also lost some respect in that locker room. Because here's the thing, and every player will say this up front, right? But every player also understands something, that when it comes to the person who's supposed to be making the best decisions for all involved, that's the head coach. That's not the player. That's not the wide receiver who's got a tweaked hamstring and it's a primetime game against a Super Bowl contender that he really wants to go out and play against. That's not who is on the hook. I don't care how old he is for making the right decision. That's the head coach's decision. And we just talked about this with Dan Quinn. And that is what makes Dan Quinn the type of coach he is. And I don't want to go overboard with this, but Todd Bowles allowing Mike Evans, you could tell right after he made that first catch. I didn't get to see every single Mike Evans route leading up to that touchdown catch, but after he made that first touchdown catch, at a minimum, even if you thought, okay, he might be good to go for the game, when you see the way he comes off the field after that touchdown catch, you shut him down. You absolutely have to shut him down. And the fact that he didn't, now you've lost Mike Evans. And not only that, we talk about these people's careers. We talk about these men who come out here and they put it all on the line. They need somebody to take care of their interests ahead of them. Mike Evans is trying to tie Jerry Rice's consecutive 1,000-yard season NFL record. You talk about bringing him back after week 11. He's got a very small window. Now, I know that's actually still 7 games. But in those 7 games, Mike Evans needs about 700 yards of receiving in order to have another 1,000-yard season. And what did we jeopardize it for? For the potential to beat one team in 1 week on one Monday night. That's why we jeopardized Mike Evans' future, this team's future, and everything else that goes along with it. Now, you want to talk about the Chris Godwin injury? Look, the decision to keep the starters out there, it's not a Chris Godwin. It's if your starters are out there, your starters are out there. We can debate that all day long. But at a minimum, Mike Evans should have never been on that field to begin with. Should the Tampa Bay Buccaneers go trade for another wide receiver? They absolutely should, because this is a team that feels like they're in a championship window. And if Mike Evans is not going to miss the rest of the season, you're eventually going to go come get him back. So what you do is you call the New York Jets and you say, hey, Mike Williams doesn't want to play for your quarterback anyway. Send
Good
him
call.
over here. We'll take on the rest of his 1 year, $10 million contract. It's not the
Good
entire
call.
$10 million. It's only part of it. You get him spun up along with Jalen McMillan, Trey Palmer, the rest of the weapons you have. You try to hold on for dear life to a playoff position until Mike Evans gets back after the bye. And then you got Mike Evans, Mike Williams, so on and so forth. And you roll with what you have, because if you're not going to make that move, brother, you might as well just shut it down now. And I'm talking about, you might just want to start your head coaching search right now as well, because Todd Bowles already came in here without a lot of people supporting him around Tampa after last night's. And I understand there are some people in the national media who think the local media out there are making too much of it. But after last night, I'm talking more about the Mike Evans decision than I am the Chris Godwin decision, even though that certainly isn't a great aesthetic either. I promise you there are players in that locker room who say this dude cares more about getting his one win than he does about protecting us for the long term.
That's fair. And I heard the other side of it from Ryan Clark on ESPN, and I get it. And Ryan was a blood and guts type player. But like you said, somebody has to protect those guys from themselves, because football's a gladiator sport. And the ones that have a lot of pride, not the ones like you were talking about, like Hassan Reddick, the ones that have a lot of pride want to really go out there and do everything that they can to help their team. But sometimes you got to make sure you help them help themselves. Now, staying in that division, a couple of weeks ago, the Bucs won a big game on the road and were all on fire. And then the same night or the same weekend, Atlanta won a primetime game in front of everybody where Kirk Cousins threw for 500 yards. Then they came back the next week and ran the ball. They looked like Nebraska. Well, they came out flat this week. And I'm wondering, is that because of messaging? Raheem Morris is a very, very good speaker. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that message, though, I'm not going to say it gets stale, but it could get to the point where people just go, he's always talking, because they came out flat, and I was really, really shocked, and they lost this game the other day. Listen to what my man Freeman from Locked On Falcons had to say.
The Falcons come out flat in a 34-14 loss to the Seattle Seahawks. I'm Aaron Freeman with Locked On Falcons. A disappointing loss for the Falcons after 3 straight divisional wins, with a mostly flat performance from the offense and defense. But Bijan Robinson impressed with his first 100-yard rushing game of the season, but the passing game was pretty flat, with Kirk Cousins throwing 2 picks and losing a fumble that led to a 45-yard touchdown return by the Seahawks. The bend but don't break Falcons defense gave up too many uncharacteristic explosive plays in the first half, and that found the Falcons in a hole that the offense couldn't climb out of. You're going to get some flat days like this over the course of 17 games in a season, and we'll see if the Falcons can respond well in their NFC South rematch against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Week 8. For more coverage of this game, follow Locked On Falcons, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
One of the reasons you go out and get a guy like Kirk Cousins is to not be flat, to not do this. And I'm shocked, especially with the fact that they have a really good offensive line, they have good running backs, and you have Matt Judon and other veterans over on that team, and Jesse Bates. I'm shocked that they weren't ready to play. I mean, you only play 17 games, right? That kind of surprises me that they let a team like Seattle that was, they came in a little woozy from the week prior. I was shocked that Atlanta lost that game in the fashion that they did.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question, Wig. When you're writing music, do you write the beat? Do you get the track first, or do you write the lyrics first?
I know people that do it differently, but for me, I would have probably an idea. I used to do this now. See, so now it's locked on. Here's your pass, right? Here's what I used to actually make beats back in the day, but I kind of gave it up. That music industry is something else. You ain't gonna have no baby oil around me, that's for sure. Now, check this out. I would probably say the idea for me would be to have an idea of a song, and then I would put the music to the words.
Okay. So there are multiple ways to do this thing, right? Some people can take the lyrics and you're talking about the idea of a song. So we're talking about writing the lyrics, then making the beats to match the lyrics. That's a very hard thing to do. You can take a beat and you can make the lyrics fit the beat a little bit easier for the most part. Here's the problem with the Atlanta Falcons. It's also the same problem the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have. It's the same problem the New Orleans Saints have. And it's the same problem the Carolina Panthers have. All 4 of these head coaches are not running their programs. All 4 of these head coaches are trying to continue another man's program or fix another man's program. The New Orleans Saints, Dennis Allen is trying to run Sean Payton's program. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Todd Bowles is trying to run Bruce Arians' program or Tom Brady's program. The Carolina Panthers, Dave Canales is the latest coach to try to fix David Tepper's program. And the Atlanta Falcons, Raheem Morris is trying to fix. I don't even know if it's fair to put it at the feet of Arthur Smith, but he's trying to fix what happened with the Atlanta Falcons came before him, because this is still Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, that Atlanta Falcons defense with Grady Jarrett and all those guys. And look, they're a talented roster, but that's somebody else's program that Raheem Morris is coming in here to fix. And Raheem Morris did not scout Kirk Cousins. Raheem Morris did not recruit Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins got recruited by the Atlanta Falcons. Okay. Raheem, like, you can't look at Kirk Cousins and say that's Raheem Morris's quarterback, because I promise you it's not Raheem Morris's quarterback. Now, I'm not saying they don't have talent, but what I'm telling you is you have a man who's coming in here and he's trying to write the music for words that have already been written. And that is harder in my mind to do than to come in with your beat and say, okay, here's the beat, guys. Here's how we're going to do this thing. Now let's go fill in the words behind it. That's what Dan Quinn is doing in Washington. It's a little bit closer to what's happening in Chicago. I still think there's a little bit of the other thing happening in Chicago as well. That's what Houston did with D'Amico Ryans. Like, D'Amico Ryans didn't come in here and try to fix Lovie Smith's program. D'Amico came in and said, all right, guys, here's my program. Now let's go fill out the bars. That's what's happening in the NFC South across the board, which is why you see 4 teams that have no identity.
Bars. You know, when we say bars, that's when somebody drops something profound in the barbershop, and it gives me a real good runway to keep reminding people that last week you told me you used to be a battle rapper. You know what? I ain't let that go yet, man. I'm still trying to figure out what your name was, what your stilo was, but we'll get to that later. We're gonna stretch this out for a few more weeks until I might have you freestyling on here. Hey, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna freestyle through this last segment. Talk about the sustainability of the Bengals winning ugly games. A win is a win, right? And go real quick to Indianapolis and find out if the fact that they still have to go slow with Anthony Richardson makes sense, especially since we just talked about Caleb and Jayden. They jumped off the bus ready to go. We'll discuss that more here on Locked On NFL. All right, let's speedball through a couple of these games or a couple of teams that did a little something the other day, and some of it worked, some of it didn't. The Bengals for the second consecutive week, and trust me, this is a game I watched intently because of my fantasy football stuff. They struggle, man. They had an ugly win, but you know, I thought about it. It's Cleveland. They never go to Cleveland and win, but they did the other day. I want you to listen to how they sound, David, and tell me, do they sound like someone who thinks that the way that they're playing is sustainable for the rest of the season?
For the first time since 2017, the Bengals bring home a win from Cleveland. For the second straight week, to come out of a win where you're not feeling great about it, but they've stacked wins. And that kind of goes to Joe Burrow being asked after the game, like, are you concerned about the way the offense is going in these games? And he's like, well, we're 2-0 in these games when we've been rocky. And when we were going well, we were losing all the games. So, except for the one against Carolina. So it goes back to the idea that, you know, beggars can't be choosers kind of thing. They need to win the game first. They made the plays to win the game, even though it wasn't very pretty. Is there a but there for you, or is that kind of the biggest?
No. Like, if you listen, maybe you're a first-time listener, and if so, awesome. The everydayers know that this is what I expected. It was going to be ugly. Did I expect 0 for 6 on third down in the first half? No, maybe not. Maybe not that. But I didn't expect this to be a track meet.
So is a win, or are you of the thinking like, yeah, we won, but I don't think we can keep playing this way?
They can't keep playing this way. And the problem is that the root of the issue of why the Bengals are playing the way they're playing, which they cannot continue to do, is because they look like a team right now that doesn't have a leader. They're a very externally motivated team from what I'm seeing. so far this season. You look at the game against New England Patriots, they make some uncharacteristic mistakes like fumbling a ball as you're entering the end zone. Like that's something that's football 101. You learn as a youngster, tuck that ball away. Yet we see, pros doing it in the NFL. They lose 16-10 to the New England Patriots. Think about putting up 10 points against the New England Patriots. Then you go out and put 25 points. Yeah, you go up and you put 25 points up against Kansas City Chiefs on the road.
Yeah.
Right? That's not the same type of team that you're talking about. The Kansas City Chiefs these days are winning more because of their defense than they are because of their offense. Then they go up against the Washington Commanders and they get into a shootout against a Washington Commanders team that likes to put up points in bunches. Go up against Carolina Panthers. Yeah, you win the game, but you give up 24 points with the Carolina Panthers team that's executing on the ground. Then you go put up 38 points against the Baltimore Ravens in a loss. So you go from putting up 10 points against the Patriots to 38 points against the Baltimore Ravens. You win a very close game. 10-point margin of victory is not the way the game flow went against the New York Giants. And then you barely beat the Cleveland Browns on the scoreboard. This team rises and falls with their opponent. The worse their opponent is, the worse they play. The better their opponent is, the better they play. And that is the trademark sign of a team that is externally motivated. The guys on the opposite side of the field are going to dictate our level of effort and our level of efficiency tonight. They're not internally motivated. Internally motivated teams like the Cincinnati Bengals would boat race the New England Patriots, would boat race the Cleveland Browns, would boat race the New York Giants, but they're not doing it. Why? Because they don't have leadership inside that building. I don't know if it's Zach Taylor. I don't know if it's Joe Burrow. I don't know if it's both, but somewhere in that organization, there's a significant lack of leadership. That is why you're at where you're at right now.
Well, Joe Burrow showed up looking like Slim Shady. Maybe he needs to tell everybody else in the locker room, you need to lose yourself, right? And get back on track and get it going. But one of my pet peeves is when people say, I'm going to outwork the next man. In order to outwork him, you got to be paying attention to him. What are you looking at him for? You need to be working. You need to be motivated on yourself and not someone else. Yeah. But comparison might be the thief of joy, but we're about to make a comparison real quick. Anthony Richardson in year 2 hasn't played a whole bunch because he's banged up. The Colts seem to be really, really patient with him, but maybe because of the success of the 2 quarterbacks, Jayden Daniels and Caleb Williams, we talked about earlier, is there a little bit of pressure on them? The guys from Locked On Colts don't seem to think so. Listen to this.
So I'm with you. You and me have really strapped ourselves in for the long haul development of this player, obviously. So our patience for him is quite long. Our tolerance for this stuff is long, but you don't want every week to say, yeah, he's young, he's still developing, this and that. Like, you don't want to feel like you're holding off the horde of, the people with the pitchforks and everything every week. Just like you said, it's got to be more than just these little pockets of positivity. And I feel like he really flourishes, not necessarily when it's too little too late, but it's like when they absolutely have to have it is like when he kicks it on. And it's like, dude, you got to go from like the beginning.
Hey, look, man, potential is cool, but potential will get you a whole bunch of losses. And at some point, there comes a line of demarcation, or there's a line or a threshold to where you're like, okay, young fella, it's the time is now, or you might have to make a decision.
Look, this is what I hate about the NFL, right? Because you're right. The success of CJ Stroud is going to add pressure. The success of Caleb Williams, the success of Jayden Daniels, Bo Nix is on that list now, and heaven help Anthony Richardson if JJ McCarthy comes out next year and lights the NFL on fire, which I don't think he's going to, by the way. And Anthony Richardson, honestly, is an example of it. Like, to be quite honest with you, the flashes that he's shown, given the fact that he has less than 1,000 reps or dropbacks in this position under his belt in big-time football, is incredibly impressive and shows you the potential that he really has.
Yeah, in football, I look at it like this. He's a guy, your quarterback in the NFL is a dude that should be navigating the ship or driving the bus. He should not be someone on a tricycle and you got training wheels on it and you're holding him while he's riding it. And I think that's the problem. They rushed him, and I think it's football malpractice, in my opinion. We'll see how it turns out, but I don't think it's going to turn out well. What will turn out well is if you tune in to Locked On NFL twice a day in the morning, my man Tyler Rowland, the Madman, will give you a double shot of espresso and wake you right on up. And I'll make sure that you don't fall asleep at lunchtime and come back, and I'll double back on you at Locked On NFL, which is right where you are right now. David Harrison joins me every single Wednesday here on Locked On NFL, and you can tap into Locked On NFL every single day, twice a day, wherever you hear, listen, or view your podcast. All right, man, that's today's show. David will be back next week, and I'll be back tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. Until then, you guys take care of each other, and we'll do the same here on Locked On NFL.